Local television news continues to evolve. As the broadcast audience numbers decline, the digital opportunities expand. The traditional TV newsroom, where I spent 30 years of my career, now must be a 24-hour news and information source, on air, online, and on app. The competition for eyeballs, likes, views, and engagement is intense, and you have to serve the audience all day, all night. And as they've been saying at 1010 Wins for decades,
the News Watch never stops. This is 1010 Wins. You give us 22 minutes, we'll give you the world.
But in this atmosphere of pushing out news, weather, and traffic 24/7, the heart and soul of any good operation is still the journalism, the storytelling, the memorable content that is unique. I have found such an operation, and a reporter who consistently finds and produces the kinds of stories no one else seems to pursue. The television station is Fox 61 in Hartford, Connecticut. The reporter is Jim Altman. And this time, we'll listen to 3 of Jim's stories, one of tragedy, one of generosity, one of inspiration. I'm BJ Fennell. Fox 61's Jim Altman joins me for 3 stories, this time on Take Me Through It.
Take Me Through It is made possible by people like you. Thank you for downloading, listening, and subscribing. And leave us a comment on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thank you.
Jim Altman is the rare TV reporter who finds gems every day, unique, compelling, memorable. And today we'll go in depth with Jim on 3 of his recent stories, beginning with his interview of retired Connecticut State Police Lieutenant Paul Vance on the 5th anniversary of the deadly school shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary in Newtown.
I remember many things about that day, from the very first phone call that I took to grabbing my hat and coat and running out of the office and heading to Newtown along with everyone else.
911, what's the location of the emergency?
There had been so many calls over the years for Lieutenant Paul Vance. But it was the one on the morning of December 14th, 2012, that has stayed with him ever since. In 43 years as a member of the state police, the chilling chatter that came over the emergency frequency still echoes. The report of a lone gunman's depraved mission.
I remember training kicking in as I was driving at very fast speeds. I remembered what I was going to do when I got there, and what my training told me I was going to do when I got there.
The shootings did take place in one section of the school in 2 rooms.
When he arrived, 20 children and 6 educators at Sandy Hook Elementary had been murdered.
We want to put this puzzle together and form a complete picture so that everyone, without any doubt whatsoever, can truly understand what occurred.
For Vance, the affable face of the Connecticut State Police, the country, well, the world looked to him to deliver the tragic news.
First responders, firemen, policemen, ambulance personnel, those type of folks go to tragedy all the time. And when it involves children, it's different.
We'll examine every piece of evidence. We'll speak to every single witness that can have any impact whatsoever on this case.
Sandy Hook is one that is very hard for many people, very hard for many of us to process on a regular basis.
5 years later, Lieutenant, what's been the hardest part for you?
Seeing the pain in the families' faces, seeing the scene, all that combined was very difficult. And not just for me, for many people.
In essence, for those of us in Connecticut, the term 6 degrees of separation didn't apply. Sadly, for too many in the state, this tragedy left just 1 degree of separation.
The victims' families, and I can't stress that enough, they're first. But it affected the townspeople, it affected the volunteer firemen, it affected everybody, and then the people in the state of Connecticut. It really did affect people from all over the world.
And from that dark day 5 years ago, Lieutenant Vance insists there have been some rays of light.
When I look and I think about the tragedy at Sandy Hook, some good has to come out of it. Some good does come out of it. Some of the families have put together foundations and have done amazing work. I can say from the Sandy Hook tragedy to today that we've gotten a little better at what we do in law enforcement. I know educational institutions have gotten a little bit better at their security.
In Sandy Hook, the sun still shines. The flag proudly waves. Traffic still flows through the center of town, and for Lieutenant Vance, now retired, his message is one that's still hard to process, but easy to embrace.
But I think that's what makes us move forward and continue on is, we've got to take some good out of a tragedy so devastating as Sandy Hook Elementary School. I think we're never going to forget what happened. It's always going to be with us.
In Newtown, Jim Altman, Fox 61 News.
Jim, what was it like revisiting that story with Lieutenant Vance?
It brings up, BJ, a lot of memories, obviously somber ones. This was among or the darkest day that I think we ever had in our professional lives. I've always said about this, and this was, and I said it in the story, but you hear the phrase 6 degrees of separation. For those of us in Connecticut, and you're a Newtown guy, this was one.
My father was born in Newtown, yes, and my parents are both buried in Sandy Hook, yes.
It's 1 degree of separation, not 6 degrees of separation. For those of us here in Connecticut, for most everybody we knew, everybody had a connection to this tragedy. And, I had 2 of my cousins went to that school. One was in the next room, was a first grader.
Unbelievable.
And I was among the first reporters on scene that day. I was off that day. I think I was in a car showroom. And then I got the call. I got in my car and I just drove out to Newtown. My first stop was to visit my family and to see how they were doing. And here I was, sort of, in the midst of this really big news story, tremendous tragedy, and having family involved in this. My cousin was ushered out. If you know that, iconic might be the wrong word, but if you know that famed picture on the cover of the New York Times, he's one of those kids.
Wow.
And here we are, forced to do our jobs and report on all of this. So it was it's still a tough conversation. This is still a tough conversation for any of us in Connecticut that had to cover this. You were a news director, so you know more about being at the helm and having to deal with something like this. My guess is that on 9/11 you were in a prominent role.
Yeah, 9/11 was very tough. I was not in the television business when Newtown happened. I watched as a viewer with just obviously complete horror and sadness and just disbelief. And I often wonder, would I have been able to do my job that day, knowing the connection that I have to the town and just the horror of the story? I think it would have been very difficult for me had I been a news director at the time to do that, and it's not something I had to face. That would have been very difficult for me.
I haven't looked at the tapes in many years since really after it happened, but there I am out, and being asked about this connection on live television that night, and you're not yourself, I'm not myself there, but you still have to do the job. You still have to, give the facts, and you still have to talk about what's going on in your head and your heart when that all happened. I don't want to fast forward too much here, but there were so many stories afterwards that were so courageous and heartfelt. Even to this day, we're still doing stories about some of the events that have been centered around this tragedy and all the good that has come out of this.
The foundations that the parents have set up.
Foundations.
Just incredible. I don't know how they find the strength to have done that. And so, Jim, 5 years later, you and Tom Carl, your photographer, who was there on that day in Newtown. So 5 years later, you sit down with Paul Vance, who is the state police spokesperson, and he was the face of this tragedy for many weeks and many months. So what was it like sitting down and talking with him all these years later?
Paul and I, we go back 12 years from when I got here, and he's the face of the Connecticut State Police, and you're collegial with him, and we've been through so many stories, but nothing like this. Nobody had been through anything like this, and he is retired now. Paul is a big presence, a big tough guy, 6'4", and just looks like a defensive end, and he's a menacing guy, but he's a great guy, and he was a friend, and to see him talk about this 5 years later, for his job, he said to me, it's just speeding there, remembering how you hear it in the story, but he just remembers his training kicking in, and he said that for first responders, for firemen, police, for EMS workers, for ambulance personnel, you go to these tragic scenes all the time, right? But it's different when it's children, and obviously this took it to a whole different level. Educators and 20 children, 26 innocent lives in all, and you have to put a professional face on this, and he did. He did, and I think really one of the great things that came out from the story is Paul has said we do, and we try to look for triumph in the face of tragedy, and he said, just like we talked about before, so many good things have come of this, but in his profession they've gotten better. They've gotten better at doing their jobs when it comes to these types of scenarios. And schools have gotten better in protecting the kids. That's what his professional opinion is. He sent me an email last week, and I don't think Paul, I like me some Paul Vance, but I don't think I ever got an email from him about a story. And I did on this one, saying thank you for handling this the way you did. And I think that's a testament to all of us here at Fox 61, between Tom and myself and the guys who look over our scripts, the guy sitting right in front of me, because this is a very difficult topic. Certainly one for him to talk about 5 years later, and one for me to report on. But that being said, it's really important that his story was told. And when he said we told it really well, that's why we do this. That's why we do this.
From the sorrow of Newtown to the joy of one family in South Windsor, the story starts with a damaged backyard playscape, but ends with, well, let's just listen to it.
The Gaudreau family in South Windsor is just looking for a little playtime.
What are you doing right here?
Lauren is a single mom of 4. 2 kids have special needs. And when a recent storm destroyed their swing set, her friend Elena swung into action to help.
Decided to put together a GoFundMe page, and I really wanted to get a new playscape for this family because I thought that they would really use it and really enjoy it.
Elena put it on Facebook one day, and I was just like, we're not going to get anything, and then
we got a lot of good years out of it.
2 miles away, the Malucci's saw the post. 13-year-old Halen had an idea. His playscape was good as new.
I didn't want it anymore, and why not give it to a family that needs it? Because their playscape was destroyed, so why not donate it?
Transporting the jungle gym? Yep. It took a lot of acrobatics. That's where the crew from Cloder Farms came in. And soon this project was on a roll. For the Gaudreaus, it appears their ship has come in. And it's staying.
it's incredible. Like, our other one fell apart in the storm, and it's just incredible. I could never have even imagined it.
What is literally a ton of fun that has changed the landscape here.
It's really cool, and I'm really excited to play on it. I'm probably going to live on it. I'm probably going to go on like every single day.
Especially this time of year with the holidays. I mean, Christmas came early today.
I would go on that every single day. Yeah. A nice postscript to the story. A Connecticut contractor has just stepped in as well. He has offered to install free fencing for the family.
Oh my gosh, nice. Jimmy, I think my heart's going to explode. That was the sweetest thing when they broke loose to get climbing on top of the thing and having the time of their lives.
That was a great moment. And here's another good part of this. The mom, Lauren, 4 kids, single mom, great lady. Today, her birthday.
Jim, what was the best part about this story?
Honestly, for me, I couldn't believe the acrobatics that were involved in getting from point A to point B, because this isn't your little backyard play. This is Noah's Ark, you know?
About the same size.
Yeah, it was like a $5,000 playscape. I hadn't seen anything like this. And the Cloder Farms, who I guess did it at a cut rate price to get it up, uprooted with all these hydraulics, and then they took it 2 miles down the road. And they did it so fast, and we put it in all high-speed motion, time lapse. So we were pretty slick with that, me and Tom Maroney, who's the photographer, is phenomenal.
Right. Now, this doesn't come across in a podcast, obviously, but I encourage everybody to go to fox61.com and find the story. Just type in Altman. You'll find this story and just about every other story you've done for the past couple of years. So
it'll be right there, BJ. Like on one of the first or second pages on my page there. You can't miss it. Guy wearing makeup in my profile shot there.
Okay. So, Jim, it's a small story. It's just about one family in one town, yet there's an element of humanity that sets this story and many of your stories apart. What is it?
So what I thought that was so interesting about this story is that here you got a single mom. She's got 4 kids. 2 of them are special needs. God bless her. She's putting all her every waking moment into their happiness. And, they lose their playscape. 4 kids. They need a playscape. And so a kid, another kid 2 miles away and his mom and dad see the post on Facebook. They try a GoFundMe and social media. There are benefits to social media, BJ.
Yeah. It can be used for good, no question.
It can be used for good. So 13-year-old kid Halen is got this huge playscape. He lives 2 miles away. He doesn't know these people from Adam. And he is like, these kids need my playscape more than me. Mom, can we give them my playscape? Sure. Let's try to make that happen. Call Cloder Farms. The deal is made. Our executive producer in the morning, Liz Berry, has a connection to this too. Her mom's a special needs teacher in South Windsor. So all of these, you talk about connecting the dots. So all these dots get connected, and Family A gives it to Family B, and we see all of this sort of drama unfolding. They deliver the playscape. The kids go nuts. We're having a party.
It's a tough business you're in, local TV news, but after a story like that, you got to feel good when you're driving home.
There's no doubt. And this is what I think, BJ. We have 3.5 million people in Connecticut. We do 9.5 hours of news a day.
Tell me about it.
It ain't all bad, man. It ain't all bad. There's plenty of these stories out there. There's a lot of stories about the human spirit. And I think it's our job as journalists to make sure we tell those stories. And we tell them well, because they deserve it. These people deserve it. And the audience deserves, the folks of Connecticut deserve to know this is going on. And guess what? It's going on.
Our third and final story. No, everybody in Connecticut knows that song. Brass Bonanza, theme for our beloved Hartford Whalers, who left town 20 years ago.
But the theme song lives on.
Forever and ever. They actually played at UConn home games when the Huskies score a goal. That's a story for another time. But because hockey is still king here in many corners of our state, including in Newington, where Jim recently did a story with the Hartford Brailers.
The Brailers, yes. They are new and fantastic, and they are made up of visually impaired, and in some cases, totally blind hockey players. It's hockey night in Newington. And the team this evening
That's it.
brings a certain focus to the rink.
That's it.
They have to, because their toughest opponent is just getting out there. For these players, the game looks like this.
Hereditary glaucoma. Developed it in my early 20s. I have a visual impairment. I have no central vision.
I'm totally blind. I've been blind for 13 years now.
Oh, nice. Oh, nice move.
On the ice, something grassroots. The Hartford Whalers are long gone, but just beginning are
the Hartford Brailers.
The Hartford Brailers.
The Hartford Brailers. That's right. Blind hockey has hit Connecticut.
You need an edge to do this. Made up of a half dozen visually impaired and blind players, the Hartford Brailers just want their shot, whether that be wrist or slap. A former Farmington High player, Keith Haley has been legally blind since glaucoma began to attack his sight in his 20s.
44 years of age, being legally blind, a lot of things get taken from you. Independence, driving, those things. I never thought I'd get the game of hockey back. The pads are all the same, skates are the same, but what is the biggest difference is the puck. It is 3 times the size of a standard NHL puck, and it's got ball bearings inside. So as it moves across the ice, you hear it.
And it is that cacophonous clang. A puck with a cowbell quality that has Jim Siddiqui playing by ear. Jim, an Air Force veteran from Bristol, is back on defense. These days, he's guarding the goal. He lost his vision in a construction accident in 2004 and is totally blind.
Out of the 13 years I've been blind, this is the most freedom that I've felt skating. You know, I don't have to hold on to anybody. I got enough pads on that if I do get in trouble, it's usually not that bad.
The pucks are a little bigger, the net's a little smaller, but essentially they say this is the same game. Go, go!
Nick McCummings, one of the sighted volunteers, serves as a coach.
You know what? It's the same drills, it's the same game. It's just, you may have to just adjust your coaching style a little bit and you have more repetitions, and that's all it is.
The Hartford Brailers are all different ages and skill levels from across the state. And out here, they say, putting their hopes, their aspirations on ice.
Oh, nice try.
Is working just fine.
What's not to like about this? It's just playing hockey, and it's awesome.
Whoa, nice save, Liz.
And the lessons that you learn on the ice can totally be taken off the ice and applied to other parts of life.
My limitations are endless until I find out what I can and can't do. What a feeling it is.
You're not stopping.
No, I'm not stopping. I'm gonna play hockey till I'm old. So, yeah, this is the greatest thing ever.
You know, we're not going out to win the Stanley Cup. You know, we're just here to get blind people back on the ice, do something we love, and if you've never tried it, come on out and give it a try.
In Newington.
1, 2, 3, Brailers!
Jim Altman, Fox 61 News.
Good job, guys. Great job. Awesome.
That's another great story, Jim.
That's my favorite story of the year.
Really?
Yeah, because the human spirit is alive and well, and hope and courage are depicted, you know, on the ice. It's tough enough to just put on a pair of skates. You're a Vermont boy now. You get on your skates.
I've
you know?
been known to lace them up.
Yeah.
It may not be pretty, but I've been known to do it.
I mean, it's not pretty when I get out there, but, you know, try doing it with limited or zero sight whatsoever. You gotta, you tip your hat to these folks, and they love it. They love it because it's just, there's a freedom out there. Like you heard Jim Siddiqui say it in there, and Jim is a great story. And guy's, you know, a military veteran for years, dedicated so much of his life to our freedom, and he lost his freedom. He was in an accident. He lost his sight. He lost his freedom. Gets out on the ice now. Guess what? Just like he said, he's free.
That's right.
He's free. He can skate. And you know what he says? I like when he says, "Hey, I've got so many pads on. If I fall, big deal." You know, I mean, this is not right. This is not college. This ain't UConn hockey, right? That they're not going at 100 miles an hour. Some of these guys though can play. I mean, some of these guys played in high school, and they were, you know, some of these guys who are out there, whether they have glaucoma or other visually impaired ailments, you know, they played back in the day, and they can still really move around. Puck's a lot bigger.
Mm-hmm. So you can hear the puck.
You can hear the puck.
Because you can't see it, most people, obviously.
You can't see it that well. So some of them are entirely doing it by sound. And they're working, you know, what's interesting about this, BJ, and I look forward to, you know, Brailers 2.0 because there are a bunch of universities looking at perfecting the technology and engineering more technology for pucks for blind hockey. Blind hockey, by the way, is nothing new in Canada. Of course, you know, Canada is the hockey hotbed, and it always will be. And they've done that up there for years. They're trying to grow it here. And they want more people to volunteer, and they want more people who might want to get out there who've never even tried hockey. Jim Siddiqui had never been on skates before January of last year. He's been at this less than a year, and he can move around pretty well.
That's amazing.
Yeah, no, I love being out there, and when some of these guys who have limited sight are skating circles around you, I don't know whether to be happy or sad about that.
You should be happy about that.
Okay, I was happy about it. So I thought that Sean McKeever, we didn't have a lot of time to shoot this story because ice time is precious.
Right.
Sean McKeever, who's the photographer, we worked together a lot, and we went in there with our own game plan. And, the GoPros help a lot because you can kind of multitask there to visually make it more, interesting. But this is a story that, as good as the visuals are, the stories of the guys playing, the guys and girls playing, that makes a story. That makes a story. Hearing about them and what this has done for them. What a difference this has done for them, getting on the ice.
Your stories, Jim, are exquisitely written, shot, and edited, and I'm glad we've been able to give a shout out to some of the photographers you've worked with here at Fox 61. And again, we want to
like 90% of the equation.
It is a visual medium, unlike podcasts that people are listening to right now. Not so visual, but I think people get the idea. And hopefully the idea is also to go look at these stories, which live on fox61.com and also on the Fox 61 News app. And go to type in Jim Altman, and you'll see all these stories. You'll see the story about the Brailers, and you'll see all of the recent stories that Jim has done.
Hartford Brailers, just the name alone. That's a story.
That's right. Somebody should write words to we're the Hartford Brailers.
I have a feeling that's coming.
Jim, thanks so much for joining us.
Great to be here. Thank you, BJ.
Many thanks to Jim Altman and to Fox 61 for allowing me to include his stories on this podcast. You can find all of Jim's stories and so much more on fox61.com and on the Fox 61 News app. And if you're in Connecticut, check out Fox 61 News. It's on from 4 to 10 o'clock in the morning, 4 to 6 p.m. in the afternoons, and from 10 to 11:30 at night. Thanks for listening, subscribing, and telling your friends all about us. You can reach me by email at bj@takemethroughit.com. That's bj@takemethroughit.com. On Twitter, at BJ Fennell, and also on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. I'm BJ Fennell. Thanks for listening, and Happy New Year, everybody. Take Me Through It is a production of Fennell Communications, LLC.